evening once again. This is a special edition of 7 Eyewitness News at 5:30. We've seen the stories, we've listened to the accusations, we've heard from the victims, from the lawyers, from the bishop himself. And now, for the next half hour tonight, we're going to hear for the first time from parishioners about how the child sex abuse scandal in the Buffalo Diocese has affected them, their family, and their faith. Joining us here in the studio tonight are Bob Bennett. Bob attends St. Christopher's in the town of Tonawanda. He is also chair of this year's Catholic Charities Appeal. Also with us tonight is Lucy Alessi, who attends Blessed Sacrament in the town of Tonawanda. And Kelly Banco is with us tonight. She's a young mother who attends Our Lady of Charity Parish, that is in South Buffalo. Also with us this evening, Father Joe Gatto. He is the president and rector of Christ the King Seminary in East Aurora. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We're here to talk a little bit about, hopefully become a little bit more informative and have an enlightening discussion. We've heard from, as we mentioned, all of the DA and the lawyers and the bishop, but we haven't talked to the people who are sitting in the pews every Sunday or every Saturday night, I guess, depending on where you go to church. And I know that you all go to church every week. So, Callie, let me start with you first, if I could. Sure. When all of this first came out, what was your initial reaction? What did you think about?
It upset me very much. I believe that my church should always act with decency and candor, and having a cover-up really let me feel, I felt betrayed by the church. I didn't feel it was handled in the proper way.
Were you shocked, though, by the initial news?
Initially, no, locally, because I know it has happened. We all know about the Boston scandal and things like that, but you don't like to think about it in your own backyard at the churches you go to.
Yeah, we should point out that this recently has become a big story, and a lot of things have gone public here in Western New York, but this has happened in many communities, unfortunately, all over the country. Lucy, what about you? When you first heard of this, what was your reaction?
It was disturbing to hear, and it was sad to hear. But my faith never changed, and it didn't waver, because the message that the Catholic Church teaches and the message of Christ has never changed.
Do you feel funny or different when you go into church now on Sunday?
No, absolutely not.
No. Do you still give money to the church every week?
Yes, I do.
So it hasn't really affected you that way at all?
No, it hasn't, because again, the message of the church is what Jesus Christ taught. And that the message is to love one another and to serve others and to be Christ-like. And this is what we're supposed to do. And these priests that did something, they did do something wrong. I'm not saying they didn't. They did.
I say to you,
and
they have received their reward.
That needs to be addressed, absolutely.
All right, but Bob, let me move on to you. You certainly are very tied in with the Catholic Church. You're involved with Catholic Charities. What was your feeling when all of this became public?
I was disappointed and initially angry, but then greatly resolved, and I wanted first and foremost to talk to the bishop and tell him I was praying for him, and told him he was a man of great courage and that we could get through this together, and it's not going to change my faith, and it certainly hasn't changed his. And whatever the issues were, we have to stay together as a church. I felt almost as though the church was being attacked, and I had to counterpunch, and that's what I've been doing frequently at not only St. Christopher's, but throughout all the dioceses.
All right, Father, what about you? There are a lot of priests that you work with all the time. How do they feel about what's happened?
One of the first things, you start off by saying what parishioners think, but many times because they're quote-unquote our priest brothers, there's a great deal of hurt. There's a great deal of anguish from our part that somehow part of our very self has been destroyed. It's been hurt. We feel the same thing. We feel the anger. We feel the anguish. We believe that what the bishop is trying to do to bring this forward, to correct it. I agree with all of them. You know, it's a serious problem that has to be faced. We have to be so conscientiously concerned about the victims, and we as priests feel, and we sense it. We walk into a place now, what are people thinking, what is going on? But those of us who are trying to live the holy life as best we can every single day, we're hurt, we're broken, and there are tears that come to our eyes.
What do people say to you? I mean, you're a priest, you wear the collar, and a parishioner comes up, and, are they mad, are they angry, do they say, oh no, we understand, it wasn't everyone? What do they say?
take all of those, put them together, and that's what I've heard. I've heard, I can't believe that Father so-and-so, I can't believe this happened. Father, we support you. Father, we didn't realize, Father, we know how human the church is and how human the priesthood is. It's across the board. I do hear periodically people saying to me, Father, I don't know whether I can do this, but we have to be careful that we don't abandon the message and the greatness of the gospel because there's individuals, whether it's this situation or others. But I'd have to say, Keith, all of those things. And it affects us. It affects how we do things, how we decide to be present in a community. It affects us, but we can't stop being the priest that Christ has called us to be.
Has this badly hurt the Buffalo Diocese? Are there fewer people going to church, have you noticed now, or not?
I have not noticed that. As a matter of fact, the places that I help out on weekends, one in West Seneca, one in Lancaster, the numbers are up and the support seems to be positive. In the moment of crisis, any crisis, we frequently find our strength to understand, to move on, and to heal. I think that's where many of our parishioners are. Are there people who probably left? People who are angry? Yes. People who are saying, well, let's take it out on the bishop, let's take it out? Yes. But overall, no.
Callie, what about you? Did you think after you heard about this that, you know what, I'm not going to go to church anymore?
I did. I'll be honest, I'm not the best Catholic when it comes to attending Mass, but I skipped Easter Mass this year for the first time in 34 years, and I did not feel guilty about it. I didn't feel like it was appropriate for me to step into a place that had caused so much hurt to children. I don't know if it's the tip of the iceberg. I don't know if it's very few in a sea of many. I don't know what's actually happened. But I don't think my faith and a building are the same thing. It has not affected my faith whatsoever. I pray the same way, I feel the same way, but interacting with people that I don't know if I can trust, who I want to trust, has hurt me.
Father Joe, what do you think of that?
I agree. I understand exactly where she's coming from, and I agree that there are a lot of people who are hurt, there are a lot of people who don't want to, but remembering it, what's at the heart of all this, you know, that the church has to face the issue. We have to address the problem. We have to. And we'll talk maybe a little bit later about the fact that when we prepare men for priesthood or deacons or lay men and women for ministry, we have to be cognizant. These are children that have been hurt. And we have to somehow address where you're at and understand that we have to almost, when you lose trust, it takes a very long time to bring it back.
So what do you do? I'm changing procedures now, changing the way you do things, changing
the seminary?
way everywhere.
Oh, I think yes, absolutely. Well, the diocese for probably since the 90s has been doing things differently, you know, in terms of our virtus, in terms of our education, in terms of the workshops, our priest convocations, the way we prepare men for priesthood, the way that we have a collaborative ministry with women and men, the fact that we have sensitivities, we do CPE programs, we have psychological testing. I mean, it is so different since the 90s.
All right. We have to take a quick break. We'll be back with much more on all of this. One of the issues, what do you say if you have children who go to church with you every week? How do you explain this to them? What questions are they asking you? Much more on all of this when 7 Eyewitness News continues. We are back once again. Tonight we're devoting our entire half hour of 7 Eyewitness News at 5:30 to a discussion about the effects of the sex abuse scandal and what that's had on the Buffalo Diocese here. We have a number of people here in the studio, people who go to church every single week. We have a priest with us tonight. Father Joe Gatto is here from Christ the King Seminary. Now, I want to go back to you, Bob, because I wanted to know, I know, ladies, that you don't have children of the age that you would have to talk to us about this issue, but I know that you have grandchildren. And how has that affected your family?
Well, they're 14 and 17, both at Catholic schools, and they had some questions. They said, Papa, what's going on here? I said, whatever questions you have, we'll discuss. You now have to check your faith and really understand and reread the Gospels, because that's how you've been raised. And so that you have to understand that Jesus came to forgive sinners. As heinous as this was, you have to think through that. And then you have to tell your friends and colleagues that this was very bad, but we have to heal, and we mustn't allow this to reduce our faith or our practice of our faith.
Lucy, you say that this, certainly has shaken you, but you are still a devout Catholic, and
Yes.
you will move on and continue on.
Absolutely, absolutely. I go to church every Sunday, and it's just critical. We are the church. The people, we are the church. And there's been some friends at our church that were very shaken. And our faith community at our church talked to these people, and we spoke of our love of Christ, and we spoke of, that we as a church, how important it is, and gave them the space and the time to heal and get over the anger over the whole situation. And I mean, it's justifiable, but they're back.
So what happens next, I guess, Bob? Can the diocese recover from this and move on and still be strong here in Catholic
I think it'll be stronger, because it's a wicked test for sure, but as we discuss and answer questions and resolve and reform, et cetera, and more people should get involved. I agree with you. This is my church as much as it is anybody else's church. I'm one of the owners.
So in other words, the diocese works for the parishioners, not the other way around.
That's correct.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Father Joe, you recruit young men to become priests. Is this going to have an effect, or has it had an effect yet, on young men wanting to join the Catholic Church and become priests?
The men who are coming forward for priesthood now are completely different than even 20 or 30 years ago. They've had a life experience. They have seen it all, heard it all, experienced more than many of us did years ago. My guess would be this would have to be in the mix. One of the ingredients they'd have to say to themselves, am I a healthy, holy person who understands? That's what formation does. That's what we do every day. We now worry about the individual. Prior to even saying yes to priesthood, is this a person who understands himself, is spiritually connected, and understands his human needs?
So it hasn't hurt you yet, then?
Not yet. And then truthfully, I'm going to say this, and I don't have any wood to knock on or to say a prayer quickly, our numbers are up.
What about this controversial idea? It's been spoken about many times before. Should Catholic priests be allowed to be married? Would that have any effect and maybe stop this kind of behavior?
It would have an effect in one way, but it would also have an effect in another way. And I'm going to say this, and it's not for me to escape from this. It's above my pay grade to decide whether that happens or not. Do I think that it would bring all kinds of new questions? Would it bring about possible answers? It may, but at this point I wouldn't say it would be positive or negative. And I'm going to tell you, the program that we put together, all of our program now is integrated with women and men for education. They do CPE, they do pastoral years, they have psychological assessments, they do all the virtue stuff that the diocese asks. These men that are preparing now to be prayerful, celibate, obedient priests are doing it in a way that even when I was in the seminary, I never had a chance to do.
All right, Father, thank you. Now, we should mention St. Leo the Great is going to be hosting a community conversation about the future of the Catholic Church next month. It's going to take place on Wednesday, June 20th at St. Leo's. That's on Sweet Home Road in Amherst. Bishop Malone himself will be among the panelists on hand that day. Now, when we come back, how you handle these headlines when you're a priest, the effect that these disturbing stories have on, again, we'll talk more about recruiting priests, the priests of tomorrow, how different they are now. And what about the Catholic Charities Appeal, the big drive every year to raise money to run the Catholic Church here in Western New York? Has that been effective? We'll find out when we come back. Don't go away. We're back once again. We have an in-studio panel tonight. We've been talking about the effect of what's been going on in the Buffalo Catholic Diocese, the effect on parishioners and on priests as well. And there's one other thing that might be affected. Every year there is a huge Catholic Charities Appeal where the money comes from to run the Catholic Church here. Bob, I know you're a top dog over there. Has this affected how much money people are giving to the church now?
Well, if it does, we haven't seen it quite yet. We're behind, nonetheless, as we raise the question and answer the question and then talk about the services. We encourage people that don't bring harm to the services by being mad about this issue. Catholic Charities has a long tradition of a network of services for individuals and families, including victims of violence of any kind at all. And so that our message is going to keep being that over and over again it's going to be a stretch to get to $11 million.
Have people called you, or have you met people and said, you know, Bob, I don't know if I want to give any more after this?
Very few have done that, quite frankly, and those that have, I would question that and say, what are you hurting? What are you accomplishing? And then they rethink it.
Because these programs don't just help the church, they help all kinds of people who live in Western New York.
Over half the people that benefit from the services are not Catholic. And we served 153,000 people last year. And we're depending on the parishes that still represent 80% of the appeal. We're doing pretty well with individual large givers, doing well with the corporate sector, doing well with schools. And so we need the parishes to complete and reach their goal, and then we'll be able to have a nice announcement at the end of June.
All right. Father, what's the effect been on the bishop and his top people and the top hierarchy of the Buffalo Diocese? Has this issue, how's it affected them personally, do you think?
I think, well, personally it's affected him. The bishop has found himself in a situation where he's had to take the reins of this and move forward. This is not just him doing this and deciding to release the names or to have a compensation reconciliation program. He is the shepherd. And one of the things that a shepherd knows is that sometimes you have to go through these Good Fridays to get to Easter. It affects the diocese in terms of people's attitudes. But I have seen through the history of the church, whether it's the time of Francis, Ignatius, or whatever, when we have things like this, all of a sudden some great people arise and great events. And I think we can be better. I think we can realize it in our brokenness.
Can the bishop do what he wants here, or is he under directive from a higher up, from in the church, telling him what he can and can't do?
In my life, he can do whatever he wants to do. But in terms of this, yes, he is the chief shepherd. Some bishops have chosen, like he has, to release the names and to work with the victims and to create a fund and to move forward, to provide counseling and assistance and all kinds of things, to create a program for sensitivities for clergy, laymen and women. Some bishops have chosen not to. I think that he has taken the stand that needs to be taken. We have to put this out in front of us. We have to face what happened, and we have to heal and be compassionate to the victims and to the church that's hurt by this. Otherwise, when would we ever heal and move forward? I believe that this is an opportunity for us to become an even better church, a more sympathetic, compassionate church.
All right, some final thoughts from our guest tonight when 7 Eyewitness News continues. Don't go away.